All right. Uh, Good morning and welcome to 5 Minutes or More with Pastor going through Psalm 23. This is our seventh one of these videos on Psalm 23. Today is April 29th. April 29th, the month of April has almost come to an end. It's unbelievable. Crazy to think about. Good morning, Anita. Good to see you here this morning. Hey, Melissa. Thanks for tuning in as we're working our way through Psalm 23. Appreciate you guys tuning in. And so, going to jump in this morning and get going. Psalm 23, we're just in verse 4 and let me get there. I was in Psalm 3, not Psalm 23. Psalm 23 and verse 4, we looked at yesterday. It says, Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me, thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. We talked about yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, walking through the valley of the shadow of death, someplace that our shepherd has been before, he's led us to before, and so we can trust him. But we're actually gonna be in verse 4 today and tomorrow, and probably even the next day, looking at this one verse. It says, Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me, thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. It's been interesting to watch people in their quarantines during this time. I've had facial hair for many years now. It's funny. Not too long, a couple months ago, I had our whole basketball team was over at the house, and they saw a picture on the wall of me with no facial hair. That was the most interesting thing to them. They just loved watching that, but or looking at that. But it's funny to see people on social media now that I know that have never had facial hair, and they're just kind of letting it all grow out. And a lot of times we refer to some of that early growth as a 5 o'clock shadow. A 5 o'clock shadow. We don't refer to it quite as a beard yet, but it's a 5 o'clock shadow. It has the idea of the shadow is the nearness of something that's coming. And so when we refer to somebody having a 5 o'clock shadow, it's the amount of hair that grows from the time they shaved in the morning till 5 o'clock that day that's already started to grow out. And it's basically saying a beard is coming. It's the shadow of it. I think even about as we get a little bit closer to summer and our days turn longer, and you have the long shadows of summer as the night approaches. And so I have all these thoughts when I think about the word shadow. This verse 4 again reminds us. He says, "Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death." The shadow of death. It's a reminder that death is coming. If the Lord tarries, death will be a part of all of our realities. But again, he says, "I will fear no evil," and he says, "Why?" Or we think, why? Why does he say that? How can he say that? Notice what he says. He says, "For thou art with me." I've been giving you a lot of words that start with P concerning the shepherd. He's our personal shepherd, and he's a providing shepherd. He's all those kinds of things. This morning, I want you to realize that he is a present shepherd. He says, "I'll fear no evil, for thou art with me." One of the interesting things that happens here in the psalm, and if we read it too quickly, we don't really notice the change here. But I want you to notice the psalmist goes from no longer talking about the shepherd. Right in the beginning is, "The Lord is my shepherd; I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down. He restoreth me." Notice what he says in verse 4, though. He says, "Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff." Notice what happens. He stops talking about the shepherd, and he actually starts talking to the shepherd. He stops talking about the shepherd, and he starts talking to the shepherd. What he's communicating is no longer happening from a distance. It's happening in communion. You say, what's the point of getting at? Sometimes when things get really difficult and times get hard, it's much easier for us to talk about God than it is for us to talk to God. But in these moments of possible worry, in these moments of possible despair, I'll tell you what, praise the Lord that He is a present God. He's not a God we just have to talk about, and we can talk about His character, and we can talk about His promises and all of these things. We can talk about those things, but praise the Lord, that's not the only thing that gives us comfort, that we talk about Him, but that we can talk to Him. He is present with us. You'll never get through the hardships of life. I'll never get through the hardships of life if we just talk about God. You need to talk to God. I need to talk to God. Praise the Lord for the Bible and for all that we know about the shepherd. But the question is today, what will you do with the shepherd? Not just what will you know about the shepherd, what will you believe about the shepherd, but what will you do with the shepherd? Because he is present with you today. And in these times of need, it's more than just what we know about the shepherd. It's about communing with the shepherd. Can I encourage you this morning to commune with the shepherd, to spend time with him, to find comfort in that? The Bible tells us that there are a few things that brought comfort to the shepherd, and we're not going to look at them this morning. We're going to look at them tomorrow and probably the next day, maybe both of them tomorrow, but tomorrow and the next day. He says this, he says, for thou art with me. Notice this, he says, thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. I'm not sure if you ever thought much about it, but a rod and a staff don't seem like really comforting things. But over the next couple of days, we're going to see how a rod and a staff is comforting. But for this morning, be comforted in this. Our God is present. Our shepherd is present. He's here, and he wants to commune with us. And so I hope we'll commune with him today and every day. And so we can tackle these days going, I have no fear. I have comfort because my shepherd is always near. Hope you have a great day, and we'll talk to you later.